And we're live. Welcome back to another episode of the Media Maestros Pod. Really happy to have you here. Really glad to be here myself. I'm one half of your team, Ram, with the one and only Ray. Ray Tay J, back in the flesh. How's it going, my guy? How you feeling?
Feeling pretty good. Summer is coming to a close. We're getting into the fall season, starting to get into the 60s temperature wise, but still trying to enjoy my time outside. Uh, how are you doing?
Yeah, man, right on that cusp, the last days of summer, the first few days of fall. It takes a second to really get used to it being fall, but fall is my favorite season. I love the football season. I love the grass. I love the leaves. Love the holidays. So I'm in a good mood. Really happy to be here. Excited to kick this thing off. And I know last time we took a different approach, did one of our deep dives, our first deep
Mm,
dive into a legend in the game,
mm,
one and only Will Smith. And this week, I think we're going to bring it back with another deep dive, right?
that's right. Yeah. Another iconic artist in their own right, someone who has maintained relevancy in the music space for uh, how long now? Probably like at least a decade and a half since they
Yeah.
really broke out. And, none other than Drake, Aubrey
Just
Graham.
Aubrey, the one and only. Just give it time. We'll see you still around a decade from now.
Mm,
A decade has come and gone, and Drake is still, I'd say, the number one artist in the game right now.
yeah. As far as what he's doing, his tour,
Yeah,
the numbers coming from that for a rapper, not necessarily competing with Beyonce or Taylor Swift, but and the relevance that he still has, people anticipating this new album
yeah.
that's coming out, which hope a lot of people are anticipating he might get back into his rapping bag after he's done some experimentation in other lanes, such as
Yeah,
Honestly
yeah,
Nevermind. We'll
yeah.
see, but yeah, he's someone that deserves kind of a deep dive, which is what we're here to do.
Which is what we're here to do. So let's get into it. First, let's take a look into his discography, some of where he's come from, where he's been. And I'll kick it off by sharing I've been a big Drake fan for a long time.
Mm,
Before the fame, I actually was introduced to Drake. Now, considering the fact that Drake's start, I was a child. As I
hmm
became kind of a teen, those preteen eras, my introduction to Drake was best I ever had.
mm.
I'm curious when you first kind of heard about Aubrey.
So the first time that I um, heard about Aubrey's music was when he started performing in the show Degrassi. So in that show, towards the end of his stint, he actually became a rapper. And then, the first actual Drake song I heard was Best I Ever Had. And when I watched the music video, I didn't know that Drake was him. So I thought he was just an actor acting in the music video until I realized, oh, that's actually, him starting or not starting, but breaking out in his music career. So
I had the same exact introduction. I remember, how when the episodes used to end, I was watching an episode of Degrassi
hmm
and on MTV, and they used to
yeah.
play the music videos after the episode ended. And I saw
hmm
the music video and I said, it was like a mind blowing
yeah.
explosion that
Same
was him.
thing.
But I do want to give him respect and acknowledging the fact that although that was Drake's commercial introduction,
Mm,
his first, I think, widely recognized project was Comeback Season.
yes.
And personally, that's one of my favorite mixtapes from an
Mm.
artist. I definitely, a lot of great artists. You think of guys like Wale, J. Cole, Big Sean, even Logic, all put out classic mixtapes. And I think Drake's Comeback Season is definitely on that tier. I'm
No,
curious what you think.
comeback season is a really good mixtape. It has some notable standouts. I think was that Replacement Girl was on there with
Placement
Trey
Girl with Trey
Songz.
Songs.
I think was the original Successful on there, or was that So Far Gone?
I know it was definitely on So Far Gone. I don't
Okay.
necessarily think it was on Comeback Season.
Yeah, I haven't visited that project, anytime recently, but I remember when I first listened to it, I enjoyed it.
Classic.
Um,
I still go to it to this day. Still play songs from that album to mixtape to this day. And he
mhm.
definitely followed that up with his first, as some would say, his first commercial release, but still classified and identified as a mixtape with So Far Gone.
So
And
Far
that,
Gone, yeah, So Far Gone is a project that, has a lot of the records that I really got my interest into Drake from. We got the big one that we were just recently talking about, Best I Ever Had.
yeah,
Um, we have one of my favorites, which is Say What's Real, because
yeah, love that one.
freestyling on that Kanye beat.
Yeah, love that
There's
one.
a bunch of tracks on here that I enjoy.
And
How do
that
you feel
def
about it?
that's a mixtape slash album that again I still go to this day. And I think that's what really opened a lot of people's eyes into Drake being someone that was not to be played with. Definitely someone to watch out for. You talk about tracks like Successful with
Hmm.
Lil Wayne, Trey Songz, Huge.
Hmm.
Talk about even songs like Bria's Interlude really just showed his versatility and kind of gave a peek into what he could be, even though that wasn't necessarily, one of his standout efforts. I think the fact that it was included on his mixtape where he's rapping, but also he's showing kind of some of this soft womanizer kind of vibe. I think it showed who he would be for years to come.
Mm. And following that up, what a lot of people do consider as it, like, if you don't consider So Far Gone this, then Thank Me Later is his first like real um you know studio album, which has again a lot of great tracks. One of my favorites is Miss Me.
Yeah.
That one I could rap from top to bottom. I've heard that
Yeah.
song a million times. Another one is Over. That one is stuck in my head. And we get uh, the first of a few appearances of Nicki Minaj. You
Yeah.
know, and it just again it shows his versatility. He has songs where he's rapping. He has songs where he's like in his singing bag. Covering a variety of different topics. So one of my favorites.
Yeah. One of my favorite albums, period. If someone tasked me with, rapping an album start to finish, no mistakes, no lyrics, that may be the album I chose. It's funny, I think about my history in music. Thank Me Later is actually the first album I ever bought,
Mm,
period.
okay.
And I know for some people, that definitely tells our age. But for me, that was an album that really introduced me to rap, hip hop, and talk about versatility. I mean, even from the first track, Fireworks, I think that album is so imprinted on me that usually I have kind of the discographies and the set list in front of me. I'm doing this from memory.
Wow.
Fireworks. Think about songs like Up All Night, Over. I mean, just a legendary first project and one of the best first albums I think in rap history.
So the first album that I ever bought was Section 80
Okay,
from Kendrick Lamar, and I think that is, easily one of the best first albums of hip hop history. And we can talk a little bit about their comparisons, later on.
definitely.
Um, but when we get to Take Care, I gotta admit, this is where I started falling off from
Hmm.
Drake.
Okay.
A lot of people consider this his his best album.
Yes.
Over time, like, you know, listening to it over and over again, I definitely appreciate it as a great album. But I just remember at the time, I just wasn't necessarily feeling those songs the way that
Wow.
I enjoyed, the stuff off of Thank Me Later. Um,
Wow. That's
but
very, very bold. Very bold. But here in the Media Maestros, we respect all opinions. And so I'm curious if that's how you felt about Take Care. Definitely a classic, in my opinion, with songs like Lord Knows, the
mm,
titular track, Take Care with Rihanna.
oh, Oh, are you naming like? Are you saying that those are classic songs,
No, I'm just
or
saying that
just songs
the
on a
album
classic
itself
album?
is a classic, and those songs were great. Make me proud.
Okay.
If you didn't like that vibe, I'm curious what you thought about his next effort, and nothing was the same.
Nothing was the same. I thought was a when I first heard it, it was unlike an album that I heard before. You have all of these like long tracks that have beat switches and he just goes in different directions. He's, again, showing his versatility, but I think this is probably my favorite as far as his song making ability. Like, I think the songs on this album are some of his best songs in his discography. So Nothing Was the Same is actually my favorite Drake album.
Wow, that's a strong comeback from the boy after being canceled. Just one album before, but I can't debate too much with that. I mean, songs like Pound Cake will forever be classics. Song like Furthest Thing really speaks to me. I
Mm,
think thinking about kind of opening projects, opening pieces, I think starting the album with Tuscan Leather was definitely a bold choice, but it set the tone for the kind of album it would be. And I think that it led to this being a classic album for sure.
classic album for sure. And then, I know there are some people that are mixed on this next one, but if you're reading this as too late, is right under Nothing Was the Same for me. I think that this album has no skips for me. And it's him, getting into the trap sound that was, really at its height at this time when you have, artists like Future and Travis Scott really breaking out in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So him doing this sound, doing it well, in my opinion. Um, but and also featuring Travis Scott on the album. I think that this one, even if it doesn't stand as a classic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that the the way that he was able to um, take that popular sound and make what I consider again some of his best songs is just a testament to how adaptable or his adaptability in crafting music.
So speaking of, taking popular songs and also thinking about the fact that this is somewhat classified as a mixtape, I'm
Mm.
curious how you feel about his following project, another mixtape, which sought to kind of capitalize on a lot of popular songs and What a Time to Be Alive with Future.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. So What a Time to Be Alive is not a song, not a project that doesn't have skips. What a Time to Be Alive definitely has skips. Um, I thought it was when it came out at the time, it was something exciting.
It was
Seeing
huge.
these two artists together, Future, at his peak and Drake, continuing his run. It was really, some compared to maybe a lesser version of Watch the Throne at the
Yeah,
time,
a
just with
lesser
the
version
height
for
of
sure.
those. Even though Watch the Throne isn't that great of an album either. That one has skips too, but that's neither here nor there. Definitely not the best of either of those artists. But yeah, What a Time to Be Alive live has some standout tracks. You got Jumpman, Big Rings,
Plastic
Plastic
Bag.
Bag. Yeah. So there's definitely some joints on there.
I think I agree with all of that, and especially the fact that it does have some skips. It
Yeah.
still is some quality music, but as I think of quality, I'm left thinking about my personal favorite Drake album,
Hmm.
Views, also known as Views from the Six, an album that I'll never forget the first time I listened to,
Oh wow.
and one that I think is filled with, I could confidently say no skips. There are some songs that I definitely like more than others,
Sure.
and I think Drake may not take as many strides in creativity and trying new approaches within this album, but I think that he definitely hits a mark that many artists I think can't go to. I'm curious what you think about it.
This is an album. It was one of my favorite albums of that year, but I believe it was probably like lower on my top 30. It was an album that I still enjoy a lot of the songs on here. I enjoy the first half of it way more than the second half of it. It's just those tracks that you get on the latter half really aren't my, go to. But, a lot of people recognize tracks like Controller and One Dance as standouts from this. And, I prefer more, hype and Feel No Ways and Nine. Those are probably the more standouts for me. But I would actually, yeah, I would consider this kind of underrated in his discography. Probably would make my top five, edge that out. But doesn't really stand with, the ones that I truly believe are the best.
I think that's a respectful take. I personally feel like some songs like You With Me, taking the DMX sample.
Mm,
I think songs like Feel No Ways. I think this is a great summer album. You play it with the windows down, cruising. I think of songs like Controller, Still Here, Feel No Ways. But at the same time, I think this is also one of those albums that's perfect for playing in the winter when it's cold, snow is blowing, you're feeling in your, having some sort of seasonal sadness. I think of
mm,
songs like Redemption. I think of songs like Fire and Desire. I think of With You. I think this shows kind of Drake's flexibility in a way, not necessarily his versatility, but his
right,
flexibility.
right. So, yeah, it's an album that this is kind of a motif that we've been saying of how, well, you used the word flexibility. I used adaptability. We both use versatility. He's just able to, tap into different vibes. Even in the same song, he can go from something more upbeat and then switch it halfway into something more mellow, and it makes sense. It just feels right.
Yeah.
Um, but then we can, go into the next project. He considered it a playlist. I don't know if he counts it as, one of his albums, but we have More Life, which, at that time, easily my least favorite Drake. Uh, Again, it's like I kind of the same way with Views was that year. It is still a good album. Like in anyone else's discography, it would probably be their best or one of their best. But for where I hold Drake, it just did not meet my expectations for a Drake album. It was more disappointing, but still had some good, tracks on it. How do you feel about it?
I think that's fair. And I think this album is most worth acknowledging because I think this is where Drake takes a turn in his career. I think he could have decided to follow the path and maintain a somewhat to be expected image. But I think this is when he starts to dabble into some other cultures. You have some of the, what is it, the Mada Rhythm, some of the 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 other cultures where he starts to borrow from. Some may say he's a culture, some may say he's a culture, some may say he's a culture vulture. But I think
Sure.
this is when he starts to add more world sound into it. He has some of the Caribbean tropical vibes in this. And I think this is foreshadowing what he does later down the line with Honestly Nevermind and some other songs choices that he decides to borrow from.
Yeah, some may say, he went down this direction for the worse. I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think it is just, different. I'm not going to say better or worse, but yeah, we get to after this or including this, his discography gets more and more divisive. You know, they're not like as universally accepted as great. Going to Scorpion, which is an album that I loved actually. It was actually my number one album that year, but a lot of people were not vibing with that. I like the idea of, having the distinction of the first half and the second half, kind of like a double disc. I like him getting pretty personal on a handful of cuts on this album. Um, and it's showcasing his rapping ability and not necessarily singing ability, but just crafting songs that are more melodic. Um, it's again probably in my top five, but not at the top. I still would put Nothing Was the Same, or if you're reading this, it's too late up there.
So speaking of divisive, I think that's a perfect segue into his next studio album release of Certified Lover Boy,
Mm,
which I think I would say is his most divisive project. I think there are the most stark differences of opinion
hmm.
in this album. Everything from the cover with the emojis to the track and the substance and the content. Personally, I'm pretty good off this album. I could do without it. There are some great songs, as I think an artist of Drake's magnitude is going to have some great songs. I think of some standout tracks, for example, of there's the one with Ty Dolla Sign, Get Along Better. Get Along Better. Love that one. I think the one with Tim's Fountains was great. I think Love All with Jay-Z, Poppy's Home. I thought Poppy's Home was, well, no, I thought Champagne Poetry was great. I thought Poppy's Home was, this album, you talk about skips and you talk about forgettable tracks. You mentioned how one album does not have no skips. I think this album definitely has more skips than it has not skips. And personally, I think this is the
Oh
first time.
wow,
This is the first time in Drake's discography where he misses more than he makes. I'm curious how
wow,
you feel about that.
that's interesting. I was looking back at it, and it's tough because I don't think that he misses more than he hits. I just don't think the hits are as hitty, if we can, make that into a word. His hits aren't as substantial, but I don't think, um, like taking the tracks that you name, I think probably Champagne's Poetry. I would give him uh, the Bridal Path track
Oh yeah, yeah.
and dang, Knife Talk, No Friends in the Industry.
Those are
Though
those are
I
the
would,
hits
yeah, I would
out of
consider those
21
like
songs.
no, that's what I'm saying. Is like I consider those like one like Drake's like great Drake songs. But the other songs like Love All, Fair Trade in the Bible, In Too Deep are just I consider good songs. But again, when we're comparing it to what Drake has done, that's where it becomes, disappointing. So I
I
don't
would
think it's a
sorry.
just to sum it up, I don't think it's a bad album, and I don't think it has more skips than hits or more misses than hits, but it's definitely probably very low on my um ranking of Drake albums, if not the lowest.
Yeah, I placed this very low as well because I think the hits are definitely not as hitty, but also the misses, he's never struck out this bad.
Oh, okay.
I think of songs like Way Too Sexy. That was one of the most egregious efforts Drake has given us in 15 years. I think of a song like Girls Want Girls.
Okay, that one
That
for
was one
sure.
of the most, and that's
That's
two on
egregious.
the same album. That's unheard of for a guy like Drake. I think of, you know, I think those are the two definitely that to have that bad of a miss. It's like when it's like Michael Jordan airballing. Or not Michael Jordan, maybe what would be comparable? I don't know. It's just bad. And
Yeah.
I it left a bad taste in my mouth, and I think for many others it did as well.
Yeah, and then, we can just touch on Honestly Nevermind. I think that album grew on me a little bit accepting it for what it was and stop comparing it to a Drake album or Drake albums of the past. I thought uh it had like some cool vibes to it, calling my name and um uh yeah, I can't remember the names of the tracks, but I remember like the melodies and the beats. So, and that was his last solo studio album. So, it's kind of hard to tell exactly where he's going to go on this one. We did get the new single featuring SZA. People are mixed on that one, more of getting into a singing bag. Who knows what we're gonna get?
Who knows what we're gonna get? But I think we're all excited, and I think we're all really looking forward to. Drake is an artist of a certain magnitude to where whatever he drops, we're definitely going to tune in. But I think that just speaks to Drake's kind of character and his status in the industry as a whole. I mean, as you think about Drake and where he stands, what is it about him that really makes him stand out?
So I have kind of a metric on, just looking at your discography and how many top tier albums that you're able to make. And that speaks a lot to me. Even if you have a couple of misses, the fact that, we've argued about what's, classic territory versus not, but just having the run from, let's say, So Far Gone to Views, and then, a couple maybe mixed in later on, that's just not a lot of artists can one go on a run the way that he did, but also have so many like albums that people consider great. A lot of artists don't even have any albums considered classic material. And the fact that Drake may have a couple, if not more, is that he has to be up there, in um as far as his class, I would say he's, you know, probably number two under Kendrick for me. Kendrick is going to be number one. So we mentioned him, here we are mentioning him. So yeah, he and then all time, it's debatable, but it would be hard not to put him in the top 10 for me if we're just talking about rapping. Um, he's made such a mark in the industry and has for growing up listening to his albums, he's just continuously put out a lot of great product.
Yeah, I think it's really apropos how we talked about Will Smith last episode and the fact that he has done a lot and he has had some less than memorable films, which
Mm-hmm.
in many people's eyes has brought down his maybe stature as one of the greatest actors or thespians of all time. When I think of Drake, I think especially some of his less than stellar performances, it's definitely taken a bit from his stature compared to an artist like Kendrick, who some would say is batting 1,000,
I
and
would.
really without fault. So as I evaluate that class, I definitely think Drake is it's debatable. Even with J. Cole, I think Drake is debatably the best in his class. And I think he's almost undeniably a top 10 rapper of all time.
I agree. And
Well,
uh,
as you think of Drake, is there anything that he can do in this next album that might push him over the edge one way or the other?
honestly, I think if he doesn't put anything on this album that really stands out, I think, well, as far as just popularity and notability, he's probably just going to remain there. But when people are thinking about this conversation of best rapper and best rapper of this generation, best rapper of his class, the more um,
Mid?
lackluster, yeah, we could say mid, that you put out, it just keeps, putting that into question. And I would hope that he actually makes some strong records with strong rapping ability, preferable for me, and not as much as of the singing, and showcases why we considered him one of the best in the first place.
I definitely agree. And I think that although his legacy is not in question and his status as a great is not in question, but the more misses, the more questions we do have.
It's true.
No, wait 1 second. We're running on time, but we couldn't leave you without a blast from the
From the
past.
past.
Close. Ray, I'm gonna kick it over to you. What you got for us?
Yeah, we had this deep dive rundown into Drake's music career, but it would be fitting for us to offer a blast from the past from, my first introduction to Aubrey Graham, which is Degrassi
Yeah,
TV show. It premiered back in 2002. Something that I grew up watching, probably the first 13 seasons until I fell off. All of those, memorable characters, memorable moments,
yeah.
JT getting stabbed,
Oof,
Jimmy, Drake's character getting shot,
oof.
wheelchair bound.
Wheelchair Jimmy.
A lot of like really important messaging. It
Yeah,
runs the gambit from, talking about STDs,
yeah.
sexuality, teen pregnancy,
Tough.
bullying, all of those, important topics. And, it's just a great, kind of coming of age teen drama.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and, Jimmy coming out of that and or Drake coming out of that as Jimmy becoming, one of the best artists of all time. It's incredible. I would have thought it watching that back in the day.
It's funny how people can start from such humble beginnings and end up unimaginably high. And I think that speaks to the media maestros, wouldn't you say?
I would say.
Well, on that note, we'll have to leave you here. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Media Maestros. We couldn't do this without you. Please like, share, comment, share with a friend, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Thanks for checking us out. Until next time, y'all. Peace.
See y'all.